transition to cleaner energy has been a major talking point at the ongoing Davos Agenda, virtual talks hosted by the World Economic Forum and globally as well. It's in an address by Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osibanjo earlier today. He called for fair and just energy transition expectations on emerging markets that depend on fossil fuels for jobs and FX earnings. So joining us to have a wider conversation about that is Roberto Bocca, who's the head of energy, materials and infrastructure and a member of the executive committee at the World Economic Forum. Roberto, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon to you. How would you describe the current state of the energy industry, I guess, globally, and how would you assess the trajectory of what we're seeing with oil prices?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. So definitely the industry is in a transformation, is in a big transformation. We're not talking all about the oil and gas industry, but really all the energy industries is in a flux, in a transition. And when it comes to the oil question, I think there are different dynamics that are playing today. A couple are classical, if I can put it this way, the balance between supply and demand and the different decision by OPEC Plus, etc. And then the other classical, if I can put in this way, is the geopolitical dimension. But there are two additional dimensions that are influencing the price, in particular in these periods. One is the volatility created by the pandemic. So the unclarity on when the pandemic will end, and so the speed of the recovery. That's one. And the other element is also the energy transition in itself. All the investment are now not only going in massive way to oil and gas, but they're going across a number of different options, and I can describe them later if you want. But that's creating additional dimension influencing the oil prices.
Thank you so much for that. We've started a new year. What's your outlook taking into consideration, gas and nuclear energy as transition sources?
Well, definitely on the basis of what I just said, the outlook is quite volatile. There are a lot of challenges, and it's interesting you mentioned, gas and nuclear. In Europe, there has been just a deliberation in considering gas and nuclear as green taxonomy. So a way for investing more also in gas and nuclear. So definitely, this is a debate is going to go on now, not only in Europe, around the world, is how much more investment will go in gas and nuclear, and definitely nuclear is again on the agenda, and it was not the case in the past.
Indeed. The World Economic Forum released an energy transition report in November 2021. I guess that even marked I think it's a decade of the WEF tracking energy transition around the world. How is the industry adapting to the transition in your view?
So there are two elements here that are fundamentally. One is that the energy industry is really segmenting itself in a much more diversified way than in the past. So if you take oil and gas sector, there is no more only the differentiation, if you like, between NOC and IOC, the upstream and downstream, but there is very much a differentiation in choices. Some company will go for more investment in oil and gas, but oil and gas that is more clean, so less emission. And other companies are going more in the direction of investing in electricity or becoming an electricity company. And then you still have other companies that are going in the space of carbon capture and reducing the emission from the fossil fuel sector. So a lot of diversification. We are seeing much more diversification than in the past. And the other element that is very interesting is how the industrial sector that use energy for production and so on are adapting, and they're calling for more clean energy, but at the same time, they have to adapt all their processes of transformation and industrialization. So this is a really big change that is happening both on the energy sector, but also in the sector of the industrial use of energy.
Thank you so much for that. Financing, Roberto, how does the finance sector finance this transition?
So I'm not an expert on finance, but I observe a bit more of rationality at the moment. In the past few months or years, there has been a bit of, banning fossil fuel, banning investment in fossil fuel, etc. And certainly there has been a decrease of investment in fossil fuel. I think now the debate is a bit more centered on emission, because not all fossil fuel are the same, and fossil fuel can also be abated. So that will make them more interesting. But when you look at the investment, there are really more choices, again, for investors that want to stay in the energy space. So of course, you still have investment, and they need to come because we still have a lot of use of oil and gas. So the investment, they go in the traditional sector. Then you have the investment in the abatement, carbon capture and storage and so on. Then you have the investment, massive investment that are coming on the renewable side because the prices have gone down, the costs have gone down, so there is a big opportunity there for scaling. And fourth, and very important, is investment in new technology. You were talking earlier about nuclear. There is new nuclear option, hydrogen, and others. So really, there is more diversification of opportunity, and so as such, more opportunity for business as well.
Fantastic. Earlier, the Vice President of Nigeria addressed the World Economic Forum, and he called for expectations for Africa's energy transition to be fair and just. Can that, in your view, be accommodated considering Africa's dependence on fossil fuels?
Thanks for this question, because this is really a critical element. The energy transition is not the transition only for climate. Energy transition has to be a just transition, as you just mentioned. It has to ensure energy access, energy security, affordability, together with addressing the climate issue. So it is possible, is an opportunity for creating jobs, for creating new businesses, etc. But it is more sophisticated than just addressing the issue of climate. And I think Africa is a great opportunity because, of course, Africa is very rich in resources and not only fossil fuel. So there is an opportunity for Africa through the resources, natural resources, the sun included, and the wind and so on, but also the resources in terms of the people to be a big part of this transition that create a more justice energy system as well.
All right, Roberto, when we had COP26 last year, there's been a number of targets that have been set. Can any of these net zero emission targets being set by nations around the world be successfully met within their respective timelines, in your view?
So I think it's very tough, and it's not possible by nation in a quest for a new dimension of collaboration between the state and the industry. So new collaboration, public-private, new way of collaborating between private and private, between industry and the value chain, and then with the public sector. So is it possible? Yes, but it's very, very tough, and it requires really a different way of operating in collaboration.
All right, just one more question for you. COVID-19, does it accelerate the energy transition, or does it slow it down, or is it of no consequence?
So that's a very interesting question, and I don't know. I think it's too early to say. But I think what the COVID did was to highlight a couple of things. One is to reinforce the importance of science, and the other is to underline the fragility of the human being as living in this planet. So with this in mind, will influence the energy transition going forward. And as I said earlier, it is possible to do this transition, and this transition has to create jobs, has to create just energy system, and it's possible that create also positive growth. And so I think the learning from COVID is what will be the biggest influence for us.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. Roberto Bocca, head of Shaping the Future of Energy with the World Economic Forum. We appreciate your time.